The proportion of questions classified as challenging in the primary school leaving examinations, or PSLE, is capped at 15% each year. Now, this essentially means that questions account for about 15 marks of the paper. The update has come from the Education Ministry, which says that the PSLE is kept at a consistent standard of difficulty. Director General of Education, Liu Weili, says that most students will be able to do the majority of the questions. She says that there will be a small number of questions to allow stronger students to demonstrate their in-depth understanding of subjects. MOE says almost 50% of students achieved more than 75 marks under the new PSLE achievement level scoring system. And this puts them at the higher end of the scoring system to reflect their mastery of a subject. The ministry says that the PSLE is an important checkpoint as it marks the end of primary school, and it provides parents with a snapshot of their child's strengths as well as their weaknesses. But MOE says that parents shouldn't let the examination consume them. More opportunities for post-secondary education will be available when full subject-based banding is implemented in secondary schools. That's from the year 2024.
In recent years, tough PSLE math questions have borne the brunt of parental anger and dismay, gathering much attention on social media. Clara Lee finds out just how difficult some of these questions can be.
I have with me Mr. Salman Shoaib, the Executive Director of Mathanasium, and in front of us we have one of the most challenging PSLE maths questions that students have encountered in recent years. Now, which paper was this question from?
This is from 2019.
And it was quite a notorious question, wasn't it?
Yes, it's a difficult question. It was quite notoriously difficult. A lot of students had trouble with it.
I see. Now let's give it a shot. I understand there are two main methods that we could possibly use. One is model drawing, and the second is the algebraic method. I'll start with the algebraic method.
That sounds good.
So, okay, now I'm stuck.
Okay.
How would you proceed from here?
Okay, so you've actually conceptually done this correctly. The way to think about it is that the diameter x equals 36.
And let's move on to the model method for the first part at least.
Yes.
Okay, so let me just give it a shot first.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm stuck.
Okay, so let me tell you how to think about this one. Plus 16, which is the space in the middle, which equals 36.
Based on these methods, I would say personally, the algebraic solution seems to be a little bit easier to understand, but what do the students think?
Well, it depends on from question to question. There is a view that algebra is a little abstract, and sometimes it doesn't really get to the core understanding that we want to build in students.
But bottom line, it's still quite a challenging question for primary school students, I believe, because even I found it difficult to solve.
Yes, it's definitely a challenging question. This question caused, I think, some consternation amongst a number of students and parents alike. But preparing students to solve these kinds of questions is something that sets them up very well for maths education later in life. So the struggle is worth it in the end.
One tuition centre says such challenging questions may cause parents to overreact, even though difficulty levels have remained largely the same.
Sometimes it fluctuates a bit because parents tend to remember that one or two very difficult question or very tricky question. But if you take it as a whole, I think maybe sometimes it makes us a bit overreacting.
Or some may say it all depends on where the students' strengths lie. It also helps if they have an interest in the subject.
Students who are more passionate in the subject, they often display a higher ability to solve the difficult questions as they enjoy the stimulation that comes with it.
Well, to help us evaluate this problem further, we have Dr. Ridwan Abdul Rahman, Mathematics Curriculum Specialist at the Ministry of Education, who will tell us more. Dr. Ridwan, good evening. So the whole point, or at least the main point of these challenging questions is to sieve out, supposedly, these higher ability kids. What happens after that, though? Once they've been singled out and hot-housed, then isn't this no different from streaming them?
I think one important thing we want to reiterate is actually what is the function of examination. And the key function actually is about supporting student learning. And if we look at how school exams are, these exams are used to identify students' learning gaps and also subsequently, especially for the end of year exams, to make decisions about the learning experiences that they can subsequently have. In national examinations, these provide opportunities for student learning in the next level of learning. For example, from PSLE to secondary 1 and from, say, secondary 4 up to post-secondary. So these are some of the exam function is provides them to with this opportunity for the next level. Now, coming to, I think, some of these challenging math questions, I want to take a step back and think about what does challenging mean. The way we have put it, we seem to think that it's either challenging or it's not challenging. But the reality is actually they are on a continuum. Some questions are less challenging, some questions are more challenging, and so on. But there is another issue also at hand, which is actually the students' own level of perhaps strength and weaknesses. And these strengths and weaknesses are actually not equally manifested. So some students are stronger in certain content area. So for us, we tend to see content as the end all and be all, right? That means learning numbers or percentage or geometry and so on. But actually, beyond that, right? Students actually have certain kinds of strength here and in the different areas. So when you have challenging math questions, they actually form an integral part of that whole examination because it assesses the student's ability in the different content areas. So this is not about just simply sieving out the good students.
Dr. Rizwan, if I could cut in here, MOE wants to convince parents as well as students, who might be stressed by this, that the struggle is worth it. But, we're looking at the fact that close to 2/3 of the cohort, they could partially or completely solve those questions. So does that defeat the purpose of the challenging questions in the first place?
Yeah, I think on the other hand, if you think about it, it shows that a fair section of our students can access such questions, and it indicates the competencies of our students in the system, and in fact we can see this even in comparison with, say, other students in other countries. So I see this as something that attests to our students' competence in mathematics.
And would you argue, Dr. Rizwan, that, in terms of the students who can't answer those questions, those challenging questions, is there a concern at all about their confidence being impacted by being unable to do as their cohorts can do, the rest of the cohort can achieve?
Yeah. I think when we think about challenging questions impacting the confidence of students, for example, we need to look at it from two perspectives. One is, what's the reaction? What's the response to something where you have a disappointment, right? That's one aspect of it. The other aspect is, how have we prepared ourselves for such an experience? So when you look at mathematics learning, actually, many of us look at it from the perspective of content, the various topics and so on. But actually, there's another key aspects of learning mathematics, which is the processes themselves. the mathematical processes, which include, for example, even representing. And in fact, earlier on, we talked about math model method, right? The model method. That's actually an example of a process where students learn to represent the mathematical situation. So learning this becomes something that enhances the student's ability to learn mathematics and also to engage in problem solving in mathematics. And the model method is not just the only one. Now, another aspect of the process is actually the metacognition itself. Yes. It's
Dr. Ridwan, thank you so much. We could continue discussing this, but we've run out of time. Dr. Ridwan Abdul Rahim, the math curriculum specialist at the Education Ministry.